Let's speak now with Philipp Ivanov. He's a China-Russia analyst and founder of Geopolitical Risks and Strategy Practice. Philipp, first of all, I just want to get your take on how Mr. Putin's first overseas trip since re-election is going. Do you think he has accomplished the objectives he set out to fulfill during this Beijing visit?
Well, I think he partly accomplished his agenda. First of all, he reaffirmed the partnership with China and the centrality of that partnership to the Russian foreign policy. He introduced his new and revamped cabinet. I think almost half of the Russian government was in Beijing this week, including these key ministers, both old and new, that are in charge of military-industrial complex and economy. And he demonstrated by bringing his team with him that there is both continuity and a change in terms of their relationship with China. But if you look at the list of agreements that signed during this visit, they are not very substantive. For example, we don't see any progress on the gas pipeline that was in negotiations for over 10 years. So it seems like China is still continuing to be hesitant about that. But the symbolism and the diplomacy that was a part of this visit, I think, was very powerful. And it demonstrated again that the Russia-China relationship is an upward trajectory, and we are likely to see it's growing in the years to come.
Well, Philipp, there was a lot of noise about peacemaking and ending the Ukraine war, but neither Xi nor Putin offered any new peace proposals. And maybe this is a long shot, but are there any parallels to the Gaza war where Benjamin Netanyahu's survival apparently seems to enhance and seem to be enhanced by a prolonged conflict?
Well, I'm a little skeptical about the substantive nature of the China's peace proposal. And also with Russia advancing in the northern Ukraine, I just don't see any clear prospects for peace. And I just think that China has really limited influence on the course of the war in Ukraine. Of course, it has a significant leverage of the Russian economy and its Russian military-industrial complex. But I think that China's peace proposal is more about diplomacy and reputation and brand of China as a global power and a global peacemaker, but not really a substantive strategy to end this war. I don't see clear parallels between Gaza and Ukraine. These are very different regions, very different circumstances. But of course, China wants to be seen as a global peacemaker, as a global power that influences the course of these conflicts, and as a positive power in the world. So I think we will see time and again, both in the Ukraine war and in the Gaza, that China is sharing its voice. China is trying to be an active diplomat. But I'm a little skeptical about the substantive nature of its peace efforts in both wars, and particularly in Ukraine.
Philipp, just looking into China's perspective, I mean, it's an increasingly tricky balancing act, as it tries to navigate the complexities of maintaining strong ties with Russia, but also managing relationship with Western trading partners. How do you think President Xi has been handling this sort of delicate maneuver so far?
I think he did quite well, given that President Putin's trip to China comes right after President's trip visit to Europe, to France, to Serbia, and to Hungary, where the main question of discussion, at least in Paris, was China's support of Russia's war in Ukraine, which remains a very core disagreement between Europe and China. And I think even though both leaders reaffirmed their partnership, I'm talking about President Putin and Xi, in the Chinese statement, I see some moderation of the language on China's support for Russia. I think there is an emphasis in the Chinese statement about that the Russia-China partnership is not aggressive in nature, is not aimed at any country. And I think that China will try to moderate its language and its overall diplomacy on Russia. But I don't actually see a substantive change in China's position.
Okay.
I think it is...
and please go on, sorry, Philip.
It is difficult to maintain that balance, but I think China and President Xi thinks that he can do both, maintain a close relationship with Russia and maintain its trade partnerships in Europe and the United States to a certain extent.
Right. So which brings me to my question, picking up on the point, the State Department saying China can't have its cake and eat it. You think Xi can try and do it? Is this something he can do indefinitely, or does he have to make a decision sometime soon?
I think China has factored in a competition with the United States. I think China has probably factored in that some of its companies and some of its banks will be a target of secondary sanctions by the United States because of its support or because of its transactions with Russia. But I think fundamentally on geopolitical and geoeconomic level, China sees the relationship with Russia as very important in building this multipolar world, in building the new geoeconomic system in which the US power is diluted. So the benefits and the longer-term impact of that relationship to China far outweigh the risks of immediate sanctions and export restrictions for its support to Russia. So I think fundamentally, at the moment, it sees a Russia relationship as core to its national interest.
All right. Understood. Philip, thank you very much. We do have to go. Philipp Ivanov is China-Russia analyst and founder, Geopolitical Risk and Strategy Practice. Thank you very much, sir.